Resident Evil Requiem isn't really known for having the most difficult puzzles in the series, if I'm being honest with you guys. Most of the puzzles are usually pretty simple to solve, mostly being here's the code and put it on this safe or lock or mystery box. Despite saying that, there is one puzzle that at the time of recording this video has still not been solved by anybody that's played the game. Seeing Resident Evil Requiem, there's a challenge that revolves around solving potentially the most complex, multi-layered puzzle in Resident Evil's history. Seriously, this puzzle makes the Silent Hill 2 remake Polaroids puzzle look like a cakewalk in comparison. Plenty of hardcore fans of the series have tried to solve this even before the game released, myself included. However, despite all of our attempts, there's still so many mysterious parts to this puzzle and pieces that we are missing. Anyway, on this episode of Nerdspace Games, I'm going to be breaking down this final puzzle, the steps that we know so far, as well as some additional clues that I think may help us solve this puzzle at some point. By the way, some of the clues and theories about solutions for this puzzle requires me to talk about certain plot points in the game, so spoiler warning for anybody that hasn't completed the game yet. But before we get started with breaking down this puzzle, if you still, for whatever reason, haven't picked up Resident Evil Requiem, you should do that right now. And the best place you can do that is, of course, Requiem Gaming, today's sponsor. Right now, they have an insane discount available for the game of today's topic, and probably the reason why you're all here. Yeah, that's right, you can save 18% on Resident Evil Requiem on PC at Requiem Gaming, and this even includes the deluxe edition of Requiem, allowing you to save even more money thanks to Requiem Gaming. And the fun and savings don't stop there. As a major fan of all survival horror games, and if you're anything like me, you'll be happy to know that you can pick up all sorts of upcoming and officially released PC games via the link in the description as well. Games like Fatal Frame 2 Remake, Reanimal, and many more are all available at a discounted price, saving you money and supporting this channel at the same time. So what are you waiting for? Save big and use the link in the description to purchase Resident Evil Requiem and any other game at a discounted price today with Requiem Gaming. Now back to today's video. So the final puzzle is a challenge that is unlocked only after completing the game. Once you beat the game at least once, you'll find a newly revealed challenge in the challenges menu called the final puzzle. As you would expect from potentially the most difficult puzzle in Resident Evil's history, the objective to completing this puzzle is pretty vague. It reads, let the sweep hair hear the voice. Yeah, who the fuck knows what that means, right? Well, there's a few theories on what I think this could mean, as I don't think we're done with this clue despite fans already making their way through the first few steps of the puzzle, but more on that later. For now, let's focus on the parts of the puzzle we have solved already as of recording this video. So the best part of the game to officially start to work on this puzzle is after you escape the basement section of Rhodes Hill, in which the elevator severs the girl's hand. After the scene here, you can then turn around immediately and pick up the hand that the girl left behind. Don't worry, she'll grow back a new one anyways. Let's not forget what she did when Leon shot her in the face, you know? Anyways, after collecting this hand, you can then bring it to a laser microscope, which then reveals a secret message that says, let's play, followed by a bunch of random letters. After scanning the hand, you also hear something click somewhere in Rhodes Hill. More on that later, by the way. For now, you have to identify what these letters mean. Funny enough, if you look at the very first microscope of the game, on the side of it, we are immediately given the first clue. G equals 150 million. Big number that we don't know what it means right away, but we'll revisit this later. For now, we need to find the rest of the letters. The second and third letters we can find while searching for the helicopter key. The second letter is hidden on this hourglass. So you need a certain item to access the secret elevator that continues the plot of the game. However, the hourglass at first appears to be a red herring as it doesn't fit into the slot. But upon a closer examination, while moving the hourglass around, we see that the sand falls and it reveals the second letter, which reads U equals 380,000. 2 down, 2 to go. The third letter is found in a file not long after entering the lab in search of the helicopter key, and it reads C equals 4.2 LY. Now technically, most people, myself included, was able to solve the puzzle from this point. However, there's actually another additional step that happens later in the game that reveals what you're supposed to do with the letter A. As stated in the secret message when you scan the hand, it said, let's play. Later, after fighting a certain boss outside of Kendo's gun shop, we find the head of a bobblehead next to a basketball hoop that's been knocked down. Well, play we must, which means we must kick the head through the hoop. After doing so, we hear a sound, and upon returning to Kendo's gun shop, we can now interact with the bobblehead's torso. Upon doing so, it tells us just ignore A. Pretty funny, right? The most complicated part of this hidden message is literally telling you to ignore the only letter you haven't found a code for. This is exactly why a lot of us was able to solve this part of the puzzle without finding this last clue for A. Anyways, moving on, let's get back to the code. We now have a number or equation that connects to each remaining letter, but how does this help us? Well, honestly, it's kind of ridiculous. As it turns out, each number is actually the distance something is from Earth. For example, the nearest star, not including the sun, is 4.2 light years, aka LY, away from Earth. The sun is 150 million kilometers away from Earth, and the moon is 380,000 kilometers from Earth. Therefore, G equals sun, U equals moon, and C equals star. Make sense? Now, where have we heard these terms before? Well, actually, we've heard them a lot, as a majority of the puzzles and key items we've been working with so far in Rhodes Hill uses these three terms. But most importantly, the safes allowed us to input a code to open them, revealing one of the three key items we needed to escape into the courtyard of Rhodes Hill. So after revisiting the safes, we learned that one of the safes, the one that we found the leather book inside of, more on that item later on, we can interact with the panels on this specific safe again. Actually, this was the clicking sound that we heard earlier when we examined the girl's hand with a microscope. Interesting, right? Okay, so now that we've deciphered the code and turned each letter into star, sun, or moon, we now have to put the entire sequence into this panel. Upon doing so, we hear a really creepy laugh that reminds us of a certain scene later in the game, but more on that later. Okay, but now, at the time of recording this video, this is about as far as anybody has gotten with the puzzle. However, there's a few key things to note that I think may have some importance to this puzzle, but at the time of recording this video, I haven't found anything yet. First off, let's talk about the creepy laugh, as it reminded me of a specific sequence in the game. The sequence in which you play as Chloe and you have to run away from the other creepy ass clones that are trying to kill everybody that they come across. Yeah, these evil kids have a very unique creepy giggle, and it's one that sounds almost identical to the one that we heard when we solved the sun, moon, and star puzzle. So I'm kind of wondering if the next step is to find something somewhere in that sequence, but honestly, I haven't been able to find anything yet. Let me know if you guys noticed something in that scene after completing this part of the puzzle. Next, there's three items in the game that stay in your inventory. One is the severed hand, which we scanned with a microscope to get the hidden message, and the other is the hourglass, and we use that one to find one of the letters. Interestingly enough, once you leave the Rhodes Hill section, these two items specifically can be deleted, discarded, whatever you want to say, from your inventory, as they are no longer of use. Obviously, this is because we're past the Rhodes Hill section and we can't go back to use them for the puzzle that they are for unless we decide to load an earlier save. That being said, there's one more key item that is added to your inventory, but the most interesting part about this item is that it can never be discarded like the previous two items that stay in your inventory after you pick it up until you leave Rhodes Hill. This item is the leather book that we find inside of the same safe where we put the code that made that creepy laugh. Now, in my mind, this means that this book will help us solve another step in this puzzle, but unlike the first two items, it's used much later in the game, closer to the end of the game, since it remains in our inventory throughout the entire game. The question is, where do we use it and what do we use it on? Like, it's a journal, but what could this random journal be that helps us solve this seemingly impossible puzzle? My initial thought is that the pen or the journal itself has a secret compartment on it that gives us another item, but I haven't been able to find anything else on it other than the two files we collect after reading it once. Another thing I want to talk about are the two dolls that we can examine in the game. The first one is near the start of Rhodes Hill in the empty cell next to where we first meet Emily. Now, I've examined the hell out of this doll and I haven't been able to find anything on this doll. I've also examined it after doing the code and also with Emily in my arms to see if anything happens or changes. Nothing. I got nothing. However, I get the feeling that this is important for some reason. To make matters worse, there's another doll that we can examine in the basement after we find Emily after she's kidnapped by the girl. Immediately after the scene where we power up the entire basement with all three plugs and we pick up Emily, there's a doll that we can examine in that same cell. Unlike the first doll we saw, this one does have something we can read though. On the foot of it, it says Marie, which is the stalker enemy's name. However, just like with the first girl, I haven't been able to figure out what to do with these dolls, if anything. Also, side note, and I don't think this is important, but I'm going to say it anyways, it's kind of weird that the doll in Marie's cell, you know, the one that she escaped from, doesn't have her name on it, but the one here in this gel-like basement cell does. Speaking of examining things, there's a model of the Rhodes Hill Care Center on the second floor of the West Wing. This model of the Care Center you can actually examine from different angles. You can get a different angle just by standing on different sides or even crouching while examining the model. I don't know the importance of this yet, but I think that examining this model from a certain angle will reveal something after you do something, but I haven't figured out what that is yet. The roulette table in the parlor room may also be important. While there is a trick that allows you to get an additional antique coin from shooting the number that the roulette wheel lands on, it's also worth noting that the wheel always lands on one of three different numbers. red 7, black 15, and black 29. Again, don't know what these colors or numbers mean yet, but I figured it's worth mentioning. The final thing I want to talk about is something that we mentioned at the start of today's video, the condition that completes this challenge. Remember what it said? Let the sweep hair hear the voice. Well, I do have a handful of theories as to what this could mean. The most obvious answer is that the sweep hair that the challenge is talking about are Emily and Marie. This is the blind girl and the stalker enemy in Rhodes Hill. If we go this route, I'm assuming the game is trying to get us to allow them to hear some sort of voice, and maybe this voice does something to help Marie change back. Like, what if there's a third ending that we don't know about yet, and this voice could potentially save the stalker enemy in the game? We already know that it's possible to turn Emily back, so why can't we save Marie, right? But what voice is it talking about, and how do we get them to hear it? I tried bringing Emily and holding her in the room where we solve the puzzle that creates the laugh, but nothing happens. I've also tried examining certain items and locations while holding Emily in my arms, thinking that maybe we can just get her to do something similar to when we needed her to read the braille on the last save. Like I held her when examining the doll in Marie's cell and the model of the care center, but again, nothing here. It's also worth noting though that Emily and Marie aren't the only pair in the game. In fact, there's multiple things that come in two in this game. Maybe Leon and Grace are the pair that the game is referring to, or there's also the two singers in Rhodes Hill and even the two chunks, but I doubt it's the two chunks because, you know, it says the sweep hair, and I'm not sure if the chunks will be called the sweep hair. If you ask me, my money's on Emily and Marie, but it really could be any of these options or something else completely different. I think someone else pointed out that the clue was already used and it was heading towards the girl's hand being used in the puzzle, but no, I think there's more here with this clue, and I'm operating off of this assumption for now. Okay, outside of all that, that's all the key details I've noticed in Resident Evil Requiem and the farthest any fan has gotten with this puzzle at the time of recording this video. There's also the possibility that some of these puzzles can only be solved in Raccoon City. However, Raccoon City is a lot more complex to investigate because of the size of the city, so it'll take a lot longer to find something there if that's where the missing puzzle piece is. With that being said, we already know that part of this puzzle was located in Raccoon City once already, which tells me that the rest of it might be too. Who knows? But one thing is for certain, this puzzle is easily the most difficult and complex puzzle in the series. Even after it launched yesterday, nobody has been able to figure out the solution yet, and people are still trying hard to unravel the mystery of the final puzzle first, including myself. Think you can do it before anybody else? Give it a shot. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Nerdspace Games. Thanks again to Green Man Gaming for sponsoring this video, and if you haven't picked up the game yet on PC, consider using the link in the description to get Requiem at 18% off today. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see all of you on the next episode of Nerdspace Games. Take care.